Thanks very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little bit fuller house tonight, which is a great sign. I love seeing this. I'd just like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, the 23rd of September to order. Firstly, I'd like to do the territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territories of Lekwungen-speaking peoples of the Kasepsum and Songhees nations, whose historical relationships with the land continue today. Item 2, approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the near and long-term agenda and adoption of today's agenda. So Councillor Jordison and Councillor Grove. Any discussion? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'd like to remove item 7.3 from the consent agenda for discussion.
I was going to wait to that point in time in the agenda, if that's fine. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Councillor Jordison.
I was actually going to pull 7.1 from the consent agenda.
We'll get to that when we
Okay.
get to the consent agenda. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so can I, all those in favor of adoption of the agenda? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Just a couple messages here, mere messages. First of all, I'd just like to thank the Arts and Culture Colwood for organizing and planning the Insight Festival held at Meadow Park last weekend. It was I think it was a great success. A lot of cultural events, and it was well attended. Second of all, I'd just like to thank all the staff for organizing and planning the public Latoria Street block party, which was basically to get dialogue going on the proposed Latoria development. Lots of good feedback from what I understand. And last of all, I'm going to hand it over to Councillor Jensen, and he's just got to do a quick update on Crest. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. As the representative for Colwood on the Crest board, there are a couple of updates. Our new build happening over at City Gate for the Crest building is underway. I'm happy to report that it's quasi on time and we're within the budget envelope, if not just slightly below at this point in time. Fingers crossed. Further to that, if you can actually see the build, if you head over there and head down City Gate, you can see where the construction is. Unfortunately, I don't have any photos at this point in time, but further good news is that we have a conditional sale on our current property located in Alto and Langford, and they were able to negotiate a sales price that's 7.3% higher than the independent appraisal. So a good bit of work done by our real estate consultant. Deposit has been made, and it's I believe a 90-day closure. So hopefully that falls as expected. Some significant dialogue with the city of Langford because the Crest site, the intersection of City Gate and Trainer, so the far end of City Gate from Costco, there is actually a little piece of property that belongs to the city of Langford, and we have proposed turning it into a micro park. So in consultation with Langford, Langford is supportive of the idea, and negotiation is underway as to how that's going to happen. I believe that Crest has put forward that we're happy to conduct the yard work or the upkeep for that spot. It's very small, but it is enough for a park bench and some green space, and it's a nice little corner which will be nicely done up. With the idea being that Langford would kick in some money for the initial outlay and work that's required, and then Crest would take it on as far as upkeep goes, and it would just be done with our property upkeep at the same time, and it's not much of an added burden. More to come back from the finance committee on what the potential costs are long term. It's still at the early stages. That is all I have.
Thank you very much.
If there's any questions, I'm happy.
Any questions from council? Oh, thanks very much. Just moving on here, item 4, which is the adoption and receive the minutes. May the mover and seconder for the recommendation in section 4. Thank you very much, Councillor Day and Councillor Olson. And any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Public participation. We only have one written submission that was received after publication of the agenda, and that will be appended to the agenda tomorrow. At this point in time, members from the public will be given the opportunity to present concerns or ask questions. You'll be given 2 minutes. You'll see the lights on there. You'll see green, yellow, and then when you hear the red and the little siren going off, I'll ask you just wrap it up very quickly, please. Alternately, you can wait until the item comes up on the agenda and you can speak at that time. Can I just see a show of hands if anyone wants to wait for their item on the agenda? Oh, wow. And which number is that you want to wait for? 8.1? 8.2, okay. Anybody else? 8.2, okay. I'll make sure I stop at those ones. And if I forget, then you can quickly remind me. Okay, at this point in time, I'll ask anyone else that wants to speak at this point in time.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this is a podium to speak to council as a whole, but I really want to address my remarks to Councillor Ward. During the discussion last time about the developer contributions or coziness or whatever the discussion was about, Councillor Ward made the point that he felt that there was perhaps some influence at the last council table from developers on some of the votes and perhaps some excess development contributions made. Fair points, he's allowed to make those. But then what he went on to say was that this was a concern of people who were at the council table on the last council and ran but weren't elected in the last election. Well, that's a pretty small group of people, of which I am one. And I was concerned that I felt that the implication was that perhaps I was the culprit that Mr. Councillor Ward was talking about, and I don't like that. So I'm here to ask Councillor Ward if he could clarify his comments and perhaps even apologize. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Councillor Ward, would you like to speak to that? Councillor Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Parkinson, for your comments. I am happy to clarify my commentary from the last meeting. As you stated at that time, I did not specifically name any councillors, but did reference the previous election and this table and said essentially this is public information. It's in the public domain on Elections BC. Anybody can have a look at anyone's campaign contributions, as it should be. And I believe, and this is something that this motion arose, although not my motion, this motion arose from the community, and that there were many people who questioned the validity of decision-making when individuals voting on a development had received significant monies from people who could potentially benefit from that. So while I tried to keep it generic and not name names, you're right, it is a short list. So I'd be happy to clarify that certainly you were not the individual in question. I actually, in fact, have a lot of respect for the work you did at the table. I believe that you voted your conscience, you voted fairly, and we're not part of a voting bloc or subject to any kind of influence from any kind of outsider. When we look at what's available in the public record, the individual in question, as I said, made a significant vote on the last council meeting prior to the election that vastly changed the value of one of Colwood's largest developments in favor of the developer. And subsequent to the election, the disclosures by Elections BC revealed that individual had taken thousands of dollars from that developer. And I believe that it's in the public interest to continue to move forward with Councillor Jordison's motion and ensure that we restore the public trust, that people know that when the council's making a decision on a development, they are doing so free of any obligation or perceived conflict And that if they do have a perceived conflict, real or otherwise, that they will be bound to recuse themselves. So again, happy to clarify though, Mr. Parkinson, a lot of respect for your positions. I think you tended to put the best interests of Colwood first in every decision. We all make mistakes, myself certainly included, but I have a lot of respect for the work that you did, and I would have enjoyed sitting at this table with you. So thanks for bringing it forward, and no slight intended.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak from the floor at this point in time? Seeing none, I will move on to delegations, item 6. And I'm gonna probably do a botched job of this, the names here, John Uliana and Urman Anniko.
Is the mic on?
Right on.
You did, Your Worship, a great job of pronouncing my name. Irmas, by the way, cannot be here this evening. He had another commitment, but with me is Bob Marinette, and he too is a member of the Cedar Hill Squash Club, and we're here in support of what we're speaking to tonight. So now, we became interested in making a presentation to you because we've seen some material that suggests that there is an interest, and there are people looking to see whether squash courts could be included in any new recreation facility that might be built in Colwood. Now, squash is not a big name sport, but it will now be in the Olympics in Los Angeles starting in 2028. Now, squash, you may have seen commercials on television where you see some children and some adults playing the game. And the tagline that they use, which I thought is very interesting, is squash is a game that you play inside the box. So hopefully you've seen that. But anyways, it's a growing sport. It's suitable for all ages, and it's a sport that can be played year-round. Looking at at your recreation master plan, it indicated that presently the emphasis is on outdoor, active, and passive recreation. They've also said that there is a growing population, a diverse population, and it requires a diversity of amenities. Now, looking at the master plan, the 2016 population was about 16,800. And they indicated that comparable municipalities had 2 squash courts. And the projected population by 2028 is 22,700, or if you like, an increase of approximately 35%, which would trigger the need for a 3rd squash court. So, the master plan did recommend that there be recreation facilities built. Now, this is just a summary of available facilities in the greater Victoria area. And there are a number of courts. Cedar Hill, with 4 courts, is the 2nd largest. The University of Victoria is the largest. There were 2 squash courts which were privately owned, and they have closed. But in total, there are 31 courts available within the area. And in terms of the existing facilities, now the total number that was available went from 38 to 31, so that was a decline of 7. And some of the courts that exist are not available for the general public. Now, U of Vic does allow some limited use of their squash courts for non-students. But 11 courts, which include Panorama, Brentwood College, Shawnigan Lake School, and Bear Mountain, we found that our members think that these facilities are simply too far to travel and try and make use of. St. Michael's University with 4 courts and Bear Mountain with 2 courts are not available to the general public. The ones at Bear Mountain, I understand, are part of a condominium. So hence the actual publicly available squash court. So we're, as far as we know, is approximately 16. Now, this is just to give you an indication of when court time usage takes place in terms of maximum. So from Monday to Thursday, it's usually from about 10:30 to 12:30 in the morning. Then in the afternoon, it's from about 3:30 through to about 9:30. Those are the peak usages. Friday and Saturday and Sunday kind of switch to midday. And then we've also provided a summary for you in terms of what the overall usage is, just for information. And here's an example of some of the activities that take place as part of the squash facilities being available. You can see that there are times set aside, and they actually get used by school groups to introduce children to the game and as part of the physical activity that takes place within the school. Then there's all sorts of other programming like coaching for juniors. There's house league, there's club social. Then there are tournaments and so on. But that just gives you an indication of how the facilities are used and when. One of the things that I thought might be interesting is what the members and at the squash club have been able to achieve. Now, it's only 4 courts, and they've had a number of juniors, that is competing in the under 19, that have gone on to become national champions. And some of them have actually gotten scholarships to continue their education and play squash. Currently, we have a world champion that plays out of our club. He just won a world championship in the seniors division about a month ago. The club is also the host for one of the national tournaments. It's called the PNW, the Pacific Northwest. And in my years, in terms of volunteering at the tournament, we've seen young people come to play, not just from the rest of Canada, but from the US, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Japan, Mexico. So this is one of the big tournaments that takes place. And also 2 years ago, the club was host to the national championships. So and there are other championships like the Victoria Island Open. But one of the things that's been found is 4 courts is not enough. And so the partner with the U of Vic and St. Michael's, it's very difficult because of locations and moving people around. And really, if there was a comparable facility, it would be great for the game, and it would certainly be great in terms of increasing the game and what can be done. Now, the recreation master plan says that a recreation center would benefit a variety of organizations, such as the Colwood Langford Elementary Schools, the District of Metchosin, District of Highlands, and Town of View Royal. So Colwood would not be the only beneficiary in terms of the people. But it also speaks to having partnerships with benefiting groups, and these can be sports organizations, community associations, and private recreation providers. So, and partnerships could also include the benefiting organizations, and this means other municipalities. So, given the benefiting municipalities and the benefiting organization, it's suggested that the recreation master plan, which currently exists, may actually underestimate the level of demand. So in terms of projected needs, now at Cedar Hill, there's 220 members, which is 55 members per court, which is the maximum allowed. There's also, last time I checked, a waiting list of 70 people who want to join. And, you know, 70 people is almost enough demand for another 2 courts. So the immediate Colwood need was for 2, as per your master plan. And based on population growth, it seems to be a need for a 3rd. So what can we conclude from that? So that based on the master plan and the waiting list that I've identified, there could be a need for up to 5 courts. Given the population growth in the adjoining municipalities and how they likely too will benefit, or if there's some partnering, ideal situation would be to have a facility with 6, but that requires some longer term thinking and so on.
I'll just let you just wrap up.
Okay, I was going to speak to funding, but I'll leave that. And also I was going to speak to the organizational model, which is in Cedar Hill, which is a private-public partnership, which is very successful and has existed for over 30 years. That's something you might want to look at, and I've left that with you. So in summary, the recommendation is that if council could endorse the concept of including squash courts in the construction of any new recreation center, and that the matter be referred to staff and the recreation committee for consideration when they bring forward recommendations as to whether or not squash facilities ought to be included, and the makeup and operation of such facilities if they are to be included. So thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Council, any questions? I just have one, John. What's the membership of the squash players in Greater Victoria? Do you have the number?
No, I don't have the number of the total membership. I only know that what we have at the Cedar Hill Club and the waiting list, and the fact that they have such a waiting list means that the other clubs must also be full. But as I said, a lot of the facilities that are built, such as U of Vic, St. Michael's University, Esquimalt, which has 3 courts, they're not available to the general public, and that's part of the issue. And these would be for the general public.
And that, just a quick second question, and it's just for my own thinking here. I remember back in the 70s and 80s that the craze for squash was pretty big. I was a squash player myself. And then it sort of faded out and racquetball became the big thing, and they started taking over the squash courts. Are they multi-purpose? Can you use a squash court for racquetball, or was it something they bastardized back then?
You're right about the craze in the late 60s, parts of the 70s. It was big and it kind of went down. And unlike racquetball, it survived and it's been increasing. As a matter of fact, at the club just about 3 years ago, we had a demonstration match between the world #1 and the world #6. So because they were having a tournament in Seattle, and so we were fortunate enough to get a match right at the club. But yeah, no, it is increasing, and based on the level of participation, it's now an Olympic sport. But the facilities, squash facilities and racquetball facilities, different size court, and no, you can't play one in the other.
Great, thank you very much. And just a quick question from Councillor Jordison.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I just was curious if you have any idea what a squash court costs to build out.
Oh, I don't have that cost, quite frankly, and it's something that Cedar Hill is looking at putting together to find out what it would cost if they added 2 courts. And they've asked me to be involved in that as part of the committee, and I said yes, I'll volunteer and be part of that. But right now we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. There are 3 items on the consent agenda, but as you probably heard at the beginning, there's 2 items that want to be struck from the consent agenda. So I believe 7.1 was Councillor Jordison asked to have that removed. So that will become item number I'll put that as item 8.4. And I'm gonna move and 7.3, which was moved by Councillor Day. I'm gonna move that to 8.2. Because we should be discussing that before we discuss the 517 Latoria. Okay. And on that note, may I get a motion to approve 7.2? Okay, Councillor Olson and Councillor Jordison, any discussion? Seeing none, any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Okay, I think what everyone is here for, it's 8.1 under new business. And before we get to you, Jen, I think there's some people that want to speak to this item. We do have, we're fortunate in this evening to have Dr. Pawarchuk and Dr. Pawarchuk. Dr. Pawarchuk, family doctor, Dr. Pawarchuk, internist. So we're fortunate to have them here tonight. And if there's some technical things that we don't understand, they looked after the medical side of this for us. Anyways, at this point in time, I'll ask people from the public if they want to speak to this item, please. I know I had some hands up for it. Oh, Mr. Saunders. Things have changed since you were
It's
mayor.
changed. We used to have to yell. And I'm on TV. Dave Saunders, 1973 Colwood Crescent. In your position, thank you very much, Mayor and Council, staff, audience. In 2006, I was first approached as a council member about seniors care. And then it went on from there. Children's affected by cancer, the BC Cancer Agency reached out to me when I was in your positions, youth mental health crises, drugs, whatnot. The main theme was family doctors. I've continued to advocate on behalf of supports for healthcare over the years since 2006. And I can tell you that we're gaining some support, but we're not anywhere near where we need to be. What you are proposing here with 8.1 is courageous. It takes courage. It's not done before. It's relevant to the exact issue in that every single one of those items that I mentioned, that's a family doctor that's involved. And I can't say enough about your courage, staff courage in bringing this forward, working so hard to create a business plan. It takes all of us to create a situation where we're going to benefit. I can tell you in my position, working with the province and the Ministry of Health right now on a doctor and nurse support plan, we're at the very cusp of the crisis. And people don't like me to say crisis, but it is. And I've been dealing with it since 2006. Again, Cynthia, you'll remember when we took on electric chargers, we thought we were told we were crazy. We were told we were nuts. We had an environment committee. We said, that's the other responsibility over there. And we took it on the chin. And at the end of the day, that was the right decision because we were further ahead than others. I know David benefited from the electric chargers, as does many at Juanifica right now. So again, courageous. I look forward to working with you to support your project. And I just can't say enough. I fully support it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dave. Anyone else in the public wish to speak on this item? Please, watch.
Oh, thanks. I'm Audrey Noel at 404 Proctor Place, and I totally support your initiative. It's past due. I have myself been without a family physician for over 3 years. If I'm sick, I go to a clinic, and that is not as easy as one might think. for the one that's in, on Goldstream. You get in the lineup 2 hours before it opens. And if you're fortunate enough to get in the door to be seen, and then if you have to go back, as I did a few years ago when I had pneumonia, so you're in the lineup, you're sick, and you're out in the elements. The one on Gorge Road, you phone in, and you can be on the phone for over an hour to, before you're given a time. If they are overbooked, then you have to repeat the process the next day. They don't slate you for the next day. Anyway, the system is way past broken, and I think in our lifetime, my lifetime, it'll be a miracle if it's ever corrected. So I think any initiative to bring physicians to Colwood would be greatly appreciated by everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Any other speakers on this item?
Hi there, my name is Catherine Stewart and I'm at 3363 Swindell Crescent. Like the previous speaker, my daughter and I are currently without a family care or a primary care practitioner. We were matched with somebody who then left. My husband has been through the same thing with his doctor as well. His doctor that he was matched with went back to England. So fortunately, he at least has some care now, but I echo what Mr. Saunders said before, is that I think you're really courageous for taking this on. I'm really pleased to see that Colwood is taking initiative. However, I did read through the documents provided and attached to the agenda, and I have some questions and concerns. First of all, I'm aware that nurse practitioners have a pretty broad scope of practice now in BC. As somebody who's fairly healthy, most of my health concerns can be met, I think, through a nurse practitioner working in conjunction with physicians. The average salary for a nurse practitioner is somewhere around 118,000 as compared to, I think, 250 for a physician. So I'm wondering why Colwood hasn't put in a provision, or maybe they're planning to, for the hiring of nurse practitioners and other allied health professionals. Also, I'm wondering why we are partnering with a private for-profit entity with Aroga Health. And I've been to the Aroga website, and I think it's wonderful what you're advocating and what you're doing, but they do have membership plans which range up to 160 a month for access to additional services. So I'm wondering what's in this plan for Aroga. I'm also wondering if any other entities were approached, if there's been an expression of interest, or if this has been decided that we go with this with Aroga. So thank you very much, and I'll leave it to the next person to speak.
Thank you very much. I can answer your questions. On your second question, we've partnered with Aroga. In this case, it's still this is a no fee practice, and it is family doctors, and Dr. Pawarchuk's wife is the family doctor in this case. It'll be a choice if someone wants to go, to extend that with Aroga. It's not an Aroga facility at this point in time. I just want to clearly make you understand that that's the case. Your first question was a simple one. I knew. Oh yes, that is phase 2. Absolutely considering this. We had to fix this. The family doctor situation at first, and the very fact that 10,000 Colwoodians are going to be covered, and that's a gigantic number. There's not going to be any municipality that has more people covered by a family doctor than Colwood. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I realize that
Yes, it was never ever intended this way. I can honestly tell you, to be totally transparent, a lot of the good ideas on how we're going to do this and how we're going to make a municipal model came from Dr. Pawarchuk And other doctors were involved with this, believe me, it wasn't just one or another, but I can honestly tell you that Dr. Pawarchuk, the Jesse Pawarchuk side of it, if I never had him, this would have never came to fruition. I can tell you that right now. I can look you in the eyes and say it was because of his enthusiasm and his help that helped us as a council move forward with this. So, I've always challenged him on what's in it for you. And that, it was getting family physicians, because that's the portal for all of us, for every single person. So I'm just so happy to be associated with Jesse on this and his wife. So so there is no fixed agenda here. You want to go with the mics?
Yeah.
Push it there, Jess.
Perfect. There we go. I can absolutely speak to that question. That's a hell of a good question. So all I do is MSP work. That's all my wife does. What happened was for 10 years, we tried to recruit family doctors and nurse practitioners to our clinic. And as a specialist, half of my patients don't have family doctors. Every day there's another person who comes, well, my family doctor's retiring. They're going to be gone in October. Now I'm part of the great unwashed, as they often will say. And it's terrible, because when you're seeing an internal medicine specialist, I mean, I hope that none of you have to see somebody like me, because you're sick, right? Heart attacks, congestive heart failure, diabetes, cancer, that we see people just before they end up in really dire straits. Hopefully we avoid it, but that's kind of our role. And so we're seeing people that should never not have that primary care. So what happened was about 2020, we got to this point where we're like, okay, well, there was a couple of software houses in Victoria that were trying to recruit essentially Americans, Australians, people from other parts of the world to work for those software houses. And the reason they were not able to come to Victoria specifically was because their spouse was saying, okay, well, that's great, but I understand there's no family medicine and I've got this young family and I'm sorry, we're going to go to Northern California or we're going to go to Ottawa. And so these firms, it's a small network, right? They approached us and they said, is there anything that can be done? So what we ended up doing was we hired a nurse practitioner and then offered that to them as a way of saying to these recruits, hey, here's the solution. Well, then people asking us, well, the nurse practitioners, they're outside of the MSP system. Can we join too? And it got to this point where you're just seeing people that are desperate. And on top of that, it helped pay for it so that it could do that. I mean, I'll tell you right now that it is not making money. And that's why I'm amused when people say for profit. I'll tell you what, there's no profit in operating a medical clinic right now. And I grew up here. I went to school in Dunsmuir. This community is near and dear to me. I don't live in Colwood. I live just across the border in Machosen. But when the opportunity arose to take an idea that Nicole and I had developed over about 10 years of, here's how the system's collapsing from the family medicine perspective, here's how the system's collapsing from the internal medicine perspective or the referral perspective. And we batted ideas back and forth. We came up with 13 domains of areas that were critically wrong. Sorry, I'm going to run out of time, I'm sure, but critically wrong with, the backstory is important, isn't it? I mean, critically wrong with longitudinal family practice and why nobody was going into it. And then we developed over many trips to Prince George and Edmonton and Kimberley and you name it, this idea. And it was to address every one of these issues. And I'll tell you what, part of why, now the other issues is, well, why Aroga, right? Well, Aroga, it's we're part of the medical practice, right? And one of the big visions that the mayor had when he first started talking about this was this idea of being more than just, it's great, let's get everybody a primary care doctor. Let's make it a duty of care for the municipality to provide that to every new resident, right? So that in the future, this is just a standard. But let's go further than that, right? Primary care isn't just about getting people well from their sickness. It's about preventing sickness, right? And so lifestyle medicine is about that. It's about integrating with the social determinants of disease in order to prevent disease from happening in the first place, right? who controls most of the governmental aspects of the social determinants of disease? Parks and recreation, transportation, climate change, the schools, zoning, restaurant zoning. Who are the people? These magnificent folks, right? You know, we love blaming Ottawa, and you know, there's plenty of blame for downtown, as in the Parliament building downtown, for things that are going wrong. But at the same time, the thing is that we want to be solution oriented. And if we want to actually impact the number of people that are sick in the emergency room at Vic General Hospital, the 55 patients I triaged while sitting outside waiting for this meeting to happen, many of whom were sent by the walk-in clinics. The only way we're going to do that is to get at the social determinants of disease. And so the ethos of Aroga is we've got a collection of doctors whose entire view of medicine is taking that preventative view, right? And so I'll tell you what, my vision in terms of this, if we're able to be successful, which I believe we will be, in getting every Colwood resident a family doctor, and that this spreads because it's built to be done all over BC, right? If that results in every British Columbian having a family doctor, and this non-business or non-profitable business of nurse practitioners that are providing private care becomes completely redundant, there'll be nobody happier than me. And so that's where I'm coming from. Just
Thanks very much, Jesse. And on the anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay, that's my segue into introducing Jenn Hepting. And I just would like to start this off by saying that last year in 2023, we conducted a survey, and it was a prosperity survey for the city of Colwood. And I could tell you that the single most important issue that was identified was residents with a lack that did not have a family physician. And you know, you try to get your hands around that. And I did find some data from, it was published by Dr. Jennifer Ross 2 years ago. And she clearly said that there's 60 to 65,000 people in the West Shore that do not have a family physician. And that was quite a jump because it was about 16,000 in 2016. And just to give you, put it in context. So if you look at just at that data point, and we've grown since then, it's 2 years ago. If you use that data point and you sort of say, okay, well, Colwood represents what, 20 to 22%. So you're looking at, you know, anywhere between 12 and 14,000 people in Colwood that do not have a family physician. That was the problem. And then the second problem we were trying to solve is we can maybe recruit, because there's other municipalities that have been successful in recruiting, but it was the retention side. This is why we came up with this new model. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to you, Jenn, too.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. I'll just take a few moments to provide an overview to the staff report that's before you tonight, and then I'll turn it over. So tonight we are seeking Council's authorization of advancing the medical clinic pilot initiative. Specifically, the staff recommendation that's before you is that Council authorize administration to enter into a partnership agreement with Aroga Lifestyle Medicine, that Council authorize administration to enter into a lease agreement with Pure Pharmacy for clinic space at 345A Latoria Boulevard. We're also looking at Council authorize administration to hire up to 8 physicians, authorization to hire 1 medical clinic office manager, as well as authorization to hire up to 4 medical office assistants, and that Council direct administration to create a new city service delivery area to be presented as part of the upcoming 2025 service review. Commented a little bit tonight about some of the historical activity that relates to this pilot project. Mayor Kobayashi, you just mentioned the 2023 Household Prosperity Survey. Our results included findings that 69% of our residents were dissatisfied with healthcare services. There's a strong concern about healthcare access for both seniors and youth in Colwood. The city's current strategic plan sets out improvements in 6 pathways: economy, infrastructure, engagement, well-being, governance, and environment. The well-being pathway contains 5 strategies, one of which is to explore primary healthcare focus. An indicator of success for this strategy is Colwood-based physicians per capita. And one of the tactics within the well-being pathway is for this city to consider approaches to support access to family physicians in Colwood. We've also heard tonight in 2023, both Pure Pharmacy and Aroga Lifestyle Medicine approached the city with an opportunity to establish a municipal medical clinic in a facility within the Commons in the Royal Bay area. You've heard we have Dr. Jesse Parchuk and Dr. Nicole Parchuk who are with us this evening to answer any questions you may have. In January of this year, Council directed that staff gather information and return to chambers with options whereby Colwood would participate directly or in partnership to support a new medical clinic facility. Since that time, city administration, we've been working to assess the feasibility of creating and operating a new medical clinic. This pilot project specifically considers a number of factors, including that we would initiate this pilot in the clinic space that I've referenced on Latoria Boulevard. That clinic space has 6 examination rooms. As a result, this pilot is targeting up to 8 physicians. Those physicians would be supported by 4 medical office assistants, 1 operations manager. There's details in the staff report. We anticipate it would take 2 to 3 years for the clinic to be fully operational. A key consideration of this pilot, we are assuming physicians will assign payment for their services over to the city. Specifically, the provincial revenues that are billed by the clinic will fund these clinic operations. So the pilot project represents a new way in this city of delivering care within an existing medical system, made possible through innovative improvements made by the province's Ministry of Health with their longitudinal family practice program. The financial analysis has been developed and is summarized on page 3 of the staff report before you. This analysis is based on a number of assumptions, including the number of physicians, their billing practice, and the medical office team in place. The clinic will require one-time city funding until fully operational. As a result, earlier this year, in late May, Council passed the resolution for staff to return with a financial plan amendment to include funding in the amount of $500,000 from the city's accumulated surplus to support this 5-year pilot initiative. Key highlights. Once the clinic has 8 physicians, we will break even and in turn will generate sufficient revenues to fund the associated costs of operating this clinic. This pilot assumes that the physicians and the support staff will all be employees of the city. These municipal employees would receive city salary and city benefits, including participation in the municipal pension plan. The financial analysis estimates that the physician's annual salary be $280,000. This medical clinic will benefit from the municipality providing overhead support from departments such as human resources, information technology, our finance team, our communications and engagement team. Costs for all of those functions have not been costed to the clinic as they do exist within existing city service areas. The staff report also summarizes a number of performance metrics. Once fully operational, the patient target is 4 patients per hour per physician. Once fully operational, we're estimating annual patient visits of approximately 50,000. Should council endorse the staff recommendation that's before you, next steps would see us immediately move into physician recruitment, into support staff recruitment. The target is to open up this clinic in early 2025. With that, that's the overview of the staff report before you. Pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks. Great summary, Jen. I'll open the floor to questions. Councillor Olson.
Thank you for that, through the chair. I'm really excited about this. I think that this pilot has great potential to be a positive model for other communities. So I'd like to thank the doctors that are here. They're making this happen, as well as Mayor Kobayashi for bringing it forward. I do have a question just regarding the finance. The city, as you said in the report, is leveraging existing municipal departments, finance, IT, communications. And that is not included in the funding model, the $500,000. Are we going to see the additional support come through our service review? Like, are we going to be able to see the implications of those costs on the city to provide that support?
Through Mayor Kobayashi. Yes, so today it is our expectation that our existing staff can support this initial phase, if you will. It is the intention that this is one of many phases that will see this become a permanent service delivery. Of course, like anything, until we get up and running and get a true appreciation for what the impact will be and what the capacity requirements of our existing teams will be to support, we haven't yet estimated any incremental costs. But to directly answer your question, with the annual service review, that is when we will be back before this council to articulate how any of our city service areas are impacted, whether it be by health administration, development, et cetera. And then we'll articulate
That's helpful.
if there is an incremental expenditure to support.
So we just don't know that yet at this point.
No,
So-
at this point, I mean, and to be clear, we have been doing this work to date with our existing team members, and often it's simply a reprioritization between time spent on various initiatives for the city.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Ms. Hepting, for the overview, and I think it's great. And there's a lot here. I think I've said it before, and I won't belabor it, but I was on the fence with all of this. I feel like it's a slippery slope for us to head down a path where traditionally these are services provided by the province. And I gave kudos to the mayor for his passion and the passion of our chief administrator and our supporting staff to get us to this point. And I'd like to say that that, along with the survey results that indicated that our community was looking for some leadership from the city in this space, because this is going to impact taxes at some point in some way. I get it's supposed to be self-sufficient, but there will be a cost to the community. But I'm comfortable with that risk based on the feedback from our residents. So here we are today. A couple of questions. I don't want to be a naysayer. In fact, I won't. But what does unwinding this look like? Because this is a trial. So presumably that has some thought has been put into how do we unwind this a couple of years from now when we find that the costs have gotten away from us potentially, or something changes legislative or what have you. Can you speak about the risk that's associated with that?
Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen. Like other city services, this will operate on a 5-year part of our annual review through service review and part of our 5-year financial plan. Every year, we'll get to look at the state of the results relative to the assumptions made. The lease for the facility will be a 5-year lease. The employment contracts will have terms. At the end of year 2, it's the hope that administration can return to this council with a report that suggests, given targets hit, we should begin looking at what Mayor Kobayashi has described as phase 2. And so we won't wait for the 5-year pilot to be complete. We will come back early as part of year 2 review to reflect on the capacity of this initiative to hit the targets that we set out today, and with recommendations on if you want to move forward with phase 2. So to unwind the lease will be relatively easy. We won't renew. The employment contracts will have terms, and the vast majority of costs related to this initiative is in the employment.
Thank you. Like I say, I want to be positive about this, and I think it's exciting. And I hope that's not the case, but we do need to be practical. The math and a small detail, I guess, or question, but we've calculated this out at 4 patients per hour, up to 8 physicians. By my basic math, that's 32 people an hour. I mean, does that account for, does that 4 people an hour account for things like lunch breaks and coffee breaks and also days off? And I mean, how does all that work? Presumably they're not working 7 days a week.
Through the mayor, so we did have much feedback into this model, including, from physicians. This model is based on 52 weeks in a year. We assume 45 of those weeks will generate billable time. And then we have within that, I believe ultimately it was a 7 or 8 hour workday that is driving the revenue numbers associated with the 4 patients an hour. Feedback I've received is that this is a rather conservative financial estimate. And of course, much like anything else, as we get up and running and we review how things actualize, we'll then refine the estimates. It also depends on the revenue compensation for the physician's work, depending on who is hired, and that model, that as well, of course, will affect the revenues generated. So there are a number of assumptions. From what I'm being told, this is conservative.
Thank you. So we've estimated on the low side and we anticipate more per hour is certainly plausible.
Certainly plausible.
I'm hearing. Thank you. And like Councillor Olson, I too will be interested to hear what the impact is on our staff cadre as we move forward, I guess, in subsequent years as far as the service review. And, if we find that we're having to hire more and more support staff, then that's a big ask of the community. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm hoping that it would be appropriate that I would move the staff recommendation.
I'll circle around to you. Councillor Ward has something to say first.
Okay, and then I just wanted to speak to the details on this. I don't specifically have a question, but I have been watching and looking for something in this space for some time. I was part of a group working towards increased access to mental health supports for youth, as well as working with former Mayor Hamilton on how we might attract the types of services that our community needed. And in doing so, my own doctor, who I had for many years, began explaining a number of the reasons why he eventually retired last summer, and why the system wasn't working for doctors. I'm also a trained medical office assistant myself at one point in my career. That was what I was doing. And it is really important that the services that support doctors to do the important work they do are made available. And I just wanted to point out to the community that one of the things that I really like about this model is that it is working to support new doctors to come and begin their practice in a supported model. So we're utilizing some of the financial supports that the province provides to those new doctors. That's a part of our model in bringing new people here, not just rearranging who's already overworked in our small little fishbowl of a capital city that we're in. And that this is something that very much came from the community looking to find what we're doing. So I'm very proud of the leadership that's been shown around this table, finding the right partners to build a model, and it's very transparent and transferable. So if people feel they want to do what we're doing, we're trying to create it in a way so they can clearly see what we've done and they could also adopt this model themselves. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When the time comes, I'd be happy to second Councillor Day's motion. Appreciate her putting that forward. I wanted to address some of the concerns that I've heard from admittedly very few people, a small handful. One of them was the letter that was received that, you know, there's provincial funding involved here. So how is it fair that it's just Colwood? I wanted to note that this is a region-wide issue. It's a province-wide issue. I like the use of the noun by former Mayor Saunders that it's a crisis. I have no hesitation in stating that either. This is a crisis situation that we are in. And it's important to note that adding one primary care physician, such as a family doctor, for every 10,000 people can lower hospital admissions by 5.5%, ER visits by 11%, and surgeries by 11%. And the impact of that resonates beyond Colwood's borders. So we are helping Colwoodians, who are provincial taxpayers, but in turn, we're helping taxpayers around the region. We're helping those other people that are unattached to a family physician that will have to continue to go to the ER and elsewhere. I would also state with this, as former Mayor Saunders said, it takes courage, but where there's courage, there's risk. There is risk with this proposal. I've reviewed the finances and everything that goes into it, and I won't spend time on that now, but there is a floor and a ceiling, and the floor is that it doesn't work and that we look at rolling it back and you know, it is a pilot that somehow doesn't achieve the goals that we've set. I don't believe that will be the case though. In fact, I believe the opposite of that, in that the ceiling is what we should aim for. If this is successful and we attach 10,000 Colwood residents to a family physician, then we look for the next 10,000. We get 20,000 Colwoodians. So when we reach a phase where we've got 22 to 25,000 people in Colwood attached to physicians, then this model moves beyond our borders and we start to help other people and we think regionally. So this isn't a myopic kind of view that we have here. I think this is about helping people in Colwood and beyond. And ultimately, just the points for me, in terms of justification for taking this risk and spending this money, putting this effort in, are really straightforward. One is that being attached to a family physician leads to better everyday health. Two, as I said, fewer ER visits or urgent care clinic visits for the clinic on Goldstream, as we heard. I've also waited in that line for 2 hours and with a lawn chair in the morning, and it's miserable. Three, it leads to better care overall. Four, higher patient satisfaction. And the bullet point here that I have in front of me that matters the most to myself, my neighbors, my family, residents in Colwood is that you live longer. And at the end of the day, if we can impact even one life positively, then I think this is a risk well worth taking. So I will be seconding and in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grove.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to, of course, thank everyone that will go on for some time. I think that the time and energy spent to put together this Colwood Clinic project has been phenomenal. So I've watched from the sidelines, really kept up to date and tried to show my support, which is what it is. I picked up today, just the other day, a coin, toonie here at the post office. It's got King Charles on it. I've been showing it to everybody. Nobody else had seen it. So I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. But it marks a change all my life. The Queen Elizabeth was on all those coins. So it's a marked change. And I feel like this, for me, it's funny how it just seems to tie in. It's a marked change. We're showing some leadership here to be the first with such a model. I think it's brilliant. I think every municipality will quickly roll this out. I'm, of course, hoping for success. I understand there is some risk. We're more than capable of managing that risk and anything that might come up. So I completely support this series of motions, recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grove. Anybody else wish to speak to this? I'll just wrap this up by stating that I think that if anything that we can do right now as a council, this is probably one of the most significant things that we could do as a collective group. It's not the usual, let's pass, land use policies. It's totally different. It's out of the box. And a comment you made, Councillor Grove, it's funny how I spent about an hour on the phone with a mayor in Greater Victoria, one of the larger municipalities, who was talking to me about it. And it was interesting. The question she asked, I guess I gave that away, didn't I? She didn't say, I couldn't say it, but you know, it was incredible. She asked me a lot of great questions because she, you know, she was talking about, she had an idea like this many years ago. And, you know, and she was saying, how are you guys doing this now? And I says, well, they came out with a different payment plan right now. And, you know, that structure made this possible. The longitudinal family physician payment plan, that's what is changed. And she asked me, well, how long is it going to take to implement this pilot? And I says, well, you know, we'll have a good idea after year 1, year 2. If you want to wait for us to do the pilot. And she says, absolutely not. Can you come over to my office next week and tell us how we can do this? So we've generated some momentum here. That's what I want to say. At this point in time, seeing no other questions, I will go to Councillor Day for moving the motion, Councillor Ward for seconded. Discussion, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question, any opposed to the motion, the recommendation? Seeing none, I will say very happily that council has moved this motion unanimously. Thank you very much. I'm supposed to say something about decorum, right? But that's okay. You always can take a few claps. Thank you. Thank you very much, Council. That was great. Now we're going to move on to, and I'm sorry we had to move 8.2 down because there's an item we have to discuss before we get to the 517. So, and that item is I'm going to call 8.2, which is the non-usable green space as a covenant rather than a park. Gord, over to you.
Thank you. I don't have anything prepared per se for a presentation on this, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, that's what I'll do. I'll actually open the floor up for questions. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I don't per se have a question. I'm concerned with this because when we've used covenants in the past for a few different areas. There was a green space requirement when Royal Bay was first zoned along Wishart Road for tree retention. And those were 10-meter buffer zones. And those areas were not well understood by members of the public, new owners to those properties. And on a few occasions, I was called by concerned neighbors when trees were coming down or alterations were being made. And it just wasn't very well understood within the community. And it seemed rather lucky, I guess, in some cases that, where intervention took place and people agreed to be more careful with the green spaces. So when they're not defined as a park, then the option would be to put them under a 219 covenant, which is registered on title of the property. And that is the way that the green spaces in Royal Bay were done. And the only option for enforcement is to go to court, which is very expensive. So then at times when we've weighed whether or not to go forward with a court action with regard to a Section 219 covenant, at the council table, it has often been a major hurdle to consider whether it's worth investing in the court costs to defend that Section 219 covenant. So I feel that where the topography or ecological sensitivity warrants protection, it has to be clear that it is protected and enforceable. as well. So that is my concern with this. And I recognize that we tend to look at our statistics about parks and wonder, well, why do we have parks that humans can't enjoy? And I guess it's because the wildlife needs them in order to continue to coexist with us. We need to have places where birds aren't disturbed when they're nesting, where animals can take refuge from humans at times, and not because we don't need parks that are usable. We do, but maybe we need a different kind of designation so that those parks are understood to be protected. And if it's just a Section 219 covenant, I feel they may not be well protected.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Olson.
Thank you through the chair. So I'm still new at some of this, but I just wanted to go through some notes here because my understanding, based on this briefing, Gord, is that the benefits of establishing a covenant versus a park is that the maintenance costs are much less. It provides preservation and protection from development. It maintains the aesthetic value of the space. And there's more flexibility on how the land can be used. The covenant allows the space in question to remain in its natural state or could be used for community gardens, walking trails, other viewing opportunities if they arise. There could be consideration given to include signage for the purpose of educating public and visitors of that particular space. So in response to some of Cynthia's comments, I'm wondering if, we could consider exploring a conservation zoning. I don't know if that's something that we're already doing for areas that are sensitive, like the ones that we're talking about now. And if that's something that can be done through zoning, planning and land use as well, like adding a conservation zoning to areas like that. I'm just not sure. For me, I see more benefit on paper. I don't have as much experience, but just to me, covenant makes a little bit more sense. There seems to be a little bit more flexibility. If you could give me some clarity on that, that would be great.
Go ahead, Gordon.
On the zoning aspects of things, I mean, there could be someone here that can answer that question better. If I can just put a little bit of the briefing wasn't meant to, we're not using covenants in place of park dedication. Is there are certain situations where we would look at, a dedication and say that the covenant would work better here than having a park, and that speaks to the Parks and Recs master plan. So it's more for us, it's a park first covenant if it makes sense, if it makes better sense and makes better budgetary sense, if it makes more sense as far as liability and that sort of thing. So this is not we're going to use covenants instead of parks. It's there are situations, and the briefing was meant to help clarify that position. As far as the zoning is concerned, I'm sorry, I'm not sure myself if there's anybody.
Mr. John.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not familiar with it being a zoning tool. It really is just a restriction on private property or already is included in your zone. That's something staff can look towards and see if there is something that can be followed up with regards to treating that as a zoning option, but I'm not aware of that being an option at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Finished? Okay, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions. Gord, so is there any maintenance done in these locations by staff, or are our staff into a covenant area to have a look on an occasional basis? Like, what does that look like for us?
We don't do any maintenance. So the covenant holder would be responsible for maintenance. My understanding is that, if there was to be any kind of, major tree work or anything like that, that we would have to be notified, and then that's when we would go out and we would monitor as well.
The only time that we would do maintenance is if it was a dedicated park.
So I take it as part of the covenant, we have full access to this property to conduct an inspection if someone does have a complaint.
That would be my understanding, yes.
And if we found a deficiency or a tree that needed to come down or a snag or what have you, does that get shared with with the property owner or the strata or whomever is managing that, and then they're obliged to take some action?
Exactly. That would be them to take action for the maintenance work that needed to be done.
But we're providing the input and the feedback and
Yes, we would.
presumably. And I do see, you know, it's a push and pull, and I can remember a number of years ago when there was a movement by the council of the day to do something odd with some of the green spaces in town. In fact, consideration for, you know, perhaps exploring whether selling some patches of green space would be something that the council of the day would like to explore, and I know it caused a bit of a furor. So, you know, the whole push and pull, green space versus a park versus a covenant area, it gets a little confusing. I would personally prefer along the lines of Councillor Day that, you know, we have control of that property, we're responsible for it, but I see what we're trying to achieve with the covenant green spaces. These are less usable areas. We want to keep them in their natural state as a buffer between urban and forested areas. And, you know, am I right in some of that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, so I think I get what we're trying to achieve. I think it goes against the grain a little bit. I'd prefer that this was an area that was a park in general terms and we maintain control over it. But then there's of course a risk to the city financially as far as maintenance goes and stuff like that. So I appreciate your précis here and how you broke it down. It makes sense to me. And I see the value for some areas being covenanted in this fashion or not, whilst we explore parks in other areas.
And that would be up to council. If that recommendation was made, were a covenant over a park or a park over a covenant, then we will obviously take direction from council on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jordison?
Thank you, Mayor. So I was very, I understood it for this evening when we came here, and then now I feel I'm very confused between the two. I even sent you an email today about that. I just, in terms of developments and there being land around it or that should not be disturbed in that, if we make it park space, then even if there's like no maintenance to it or what have you, then it becomes the city's responsibility, correct? If we make it a covenant, it stays with the developer or the strata or so that concerns me a bit, just because we have a lot of park space already, and I don't know. I mean, we always want park space, and it just gets a little complicated. I think if we're saying, you know, this park is well, this park gets looked at once a year. This park gets some medium care. I'm not sure that how easy that is to understand to the public, to myself, even to you. So I'm just confused about which way this should go. Thank you. It was just more of a comment, I guess.
There was a bit of no question then. Okay. Councillor Grove?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I have is about the situation where you do have develop like ad hoc trails evolve, bicycle use, which conceivably would happen whether it's a park or a covenant. How, when it's a covenant, would the standard to which we establish the natural state of this area, and how we can we would monitor it, but then how do we enforce the repair or the protection of the area? And I think that the question is, how is the covenant, 219 covenant, robust enough?
That's a good question. I feel that a 219 covenant is a fairly powerful tool to use in this type of situation. But once again, this is a decision, or these are, decisions we make kind of based on our guiding documents and that sort of thing. So, I do believe that it's robust enough to protect land. I mean, we've heard tonight that there are situations that do happen where covenants are maybe broke, or like there's trees that come down and or property that expands past property lines, that sort of thing. That's going to happen, covenant or park. Do we have better enforcement as a park or a 219 covenant? I think they're relatively the same in my opinion.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have another question. If in time it would become reasonable to turn this into park or designate it park, is that, I think the developer is offering it for free at this point with this coming zoning request. So if it becomes a covenant, is this going to cost us a lot of money to make it a park, or does it stay a covenant forever? Can you?
That's
Sure how
That's
goes.
another good question, and I'm not sure. I do believe that we could make this a park, but I think we would have to. I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure. I can.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the basic principle behind a covenant is you are giving up some control, or at least flexibility of control. In return, you're really protecting yourself in the liability. So in this particular instance, you're going to have a significant amount of trees behind these households. So what's going to happen when the wind blows? You're going to have branches fall. They're going to fall in yards. They're going to fall on decks, and the people are going to call them.
We're speaking to another, specifically, and with all due respect, it's not the speaker right now, but councilors have started mentioning in relation to a specific thing. This was brought forth for information by board. Yeah. I believe we're offside.
Yeah, I'm going to rule in favor of you. You're correct. I was feeling the uncomfort, and I kept on thinking, when I'm supposed to recuse myself here.
So, Your Worship, just with regards to a covenant,
Yes.
that covenant itself, you're giving up that liability potential, or saving that liability potential for the city for trees falling on houses, whatever can occur, and then the maintenance that goes along with that. What you lose is the ability to absolutely control that area, because it's not a park. If it's a park, then through bylaws and so on, we can restrict uses, we can restrict ability to enter that area, we can fence it off. What would happen in this case is anytime there's a covenant, you can work with that, because it's a bilateral agreement where you say to the property owner, this is what we want you to do. They agree to that. So you can have an agreement in there where at times they would be happy to give up that land, and it may not cost the city anything, because then they don't take on the liability and maintenance of that property. So that covenant switch would have to be agreeable, but it could be a negotiated process that could be in favor of the city.
Thank you very much.
That
Thank you. Council Ward?
Yeah, I just think in this particular discussion, I mean, really we're, and thankfully it was just mentioned, liability is a factor. And cost. There's also value. Parks are a measurable asset to a community. We often see that in information pieces out there around communities. How many acres of parkland do you have? How many parklets? How many parks? A couple weeks ago, I was up in the Carmana Walbrand, and only a very small portion of that park is accessible or usable. The vast majority of it is inaccessible, but it doesn't denigrate its value as a park. So to me, this question maybe is best asked on a case-by-case basis. I certainly see, Councillor Day's point, around the difference between parks and covenants. And I want to bring attention the discussion that happened around Machosen Road and the Beachlands area and that embankment, whereby, you know, on the surface that was offered up as a park, and you would think, okay, that's great, but then the liability, if that starts sloughing off, and then managing the mowing of the grass and things there, could have a huge negative impact in terms of cost on the city. In that case, you may say, well, geez, we want that to be a covenant. Now, in a different situation, the reverse could be true. We would say, okay, the liability is limited, but from just a pure green space standpoint, a certain maybe new classification of park would be best served. So I think there's a bigger discussion here, and I do think it's case by case. To try to take a blanket approach to it would do us a disservice.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm just up for just put my first time around. So I feel that exactly the same way, because I've seen how it works. Like I just happen to be in an area where there's fenced off areas that are called parks. They're designated parks, and when really you can't build anything on them anyways. But it's nice because, you know, in the 12 years that I lived in my place, you know, maybe once in the 12 years, I see city staff in there like cleaning up a few fallen trees and things like that. But you know, other than that, it's low maintenance. It's with that low maintenance thing, but yet it's called a park. So I didn't see a lot of expense in that, and yet it's well maintained. And I think the area by the ditch area on the Bezanton side there, I think that's designated a park too, I believe. But again, it's, you know, fallen trees, you guys maintain it, you guys do a great job, but it's low maintenance. You don't see them in there every week or every month or anything like that. So it's, I like that kind of park, you know, it's a park and yet it's low maintenance. So, you know, I personally don't think, you know, even though there's not a recommendation in this, in fact, it's just for us to think, and it's a great debate that we're having right now. And I think, you know, you have to look at everything on a case by case basis. That I would feel more comfortable with that, because I didn't know which way, you know, if there was a recommendation, I didn't know which way I was going to vote. But the case by case, the way that you guys analyze it, I agree, because the track record looks really good to me. So that's my comments. And I'll go over to Councillor Day for a second time.
Thank you. I just wanted to correct one thing, and that's with regards to liability. There is no liability from a tree falling, even if it falls on a house. It's an act of God. You have insurance on your house. That is a reality, that there is no middle ground on that one. You insure your house, you insure your car, and when trees fall, which they do sometimes without predictability, and sometimes they stand for hundreds and hundreds of years. But I also want to compare a covenant area and a park area. So in a park area where damage occurs, you could do something about that. As a park manager, you saw that people are trespassing in a certain area of the park. You might put up some barriers, you might put up some signs, you might do some restoration work. In a covenant area, you have very little control over what happens with that. And with the Section 219 covenant, your only choice is a big money choice. If you want to defend that covenant, you go to court. So I think it's important to recognize that we have a very regulated community that we live in. If your neighbor's tree falls on your house insurance will fix you up. They probably didn't intend for the tree to fall. And likewise, if you have a beautiful park and someone is doing bad things in it, it's very quick and easy when it's under the city's control to do something about it. It can be much more difficult to regulate or designate when it's under someone else's ownership. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Earl, were you looking for a council resolution of any sort, or was this just up for discussion then?
Thank you, Worship. This is just a briefing. No decision required.
Thank you very much. I think you might have got the intent here, board, and yeah, got a good feel. Okay, super. Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna go to the next item, which is 517 Latoria Road. As I am a direct neighbor of this development, there may be an apprehension of bias, so I will be recusing myself here. And I do have a bias, I'll admit it. But so I'm gonna ask the acting mayor to chair this item and just give me a call when you're finished. Thank you very much. You got the chair.
Okay, so well, I don't even know what number we're calling it now. 883. Does staff want to come up to, oh, oh yeah, sorry. Public participation. If anyone would like to speak to it.
Good evening to council, acting mayor. My name is Julia Trops. I live at 526 Bezanton. So basically, I'm here tonight to talk about what I witnessed at the Parks meeting in August. I came away with a number of perceptions, 3 of them that were overwhelming. The first was that the Parks Committee was being bullied by the developer. The developer was not listening to the committee when they gave feedback, and the developer tried to buy their way to their goals, regardless of the viewpoints of neighbors, community, and council. At that meeting, at 7:13 p.m., the developer said, there are, quote, neighborhood expectations about what they think they should have, unquote. In fact, these expectations are based on the promises held in the covenant. Just wanted to be clear that the covenant was not impacted by Bill 44. From my research, the province is not telling the developer or the council or the city to do this density. Please do not push density increase based on 44. I am interested on the results that you are requiring the developer to complete. That does give me some hope. And lastly, the developer has proposed another covenant within that Parks meeting with proposed strata corporation, but they have difficulty honoring the one that they've already given. So what makes Colwood believe that they're going to honor that one? The last recommendation refers again to a covenant. Why is a covenant being referred to again when they won't honor the current one? And if there are other covenants being discussed in Colwood, the current one should be honored. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Acting Mayor and Council. My name is Karen Woodland. I live at 524 Elevation Point Terrace. I first of all want to say thank you very much to Councillor Day for your remarks on covenant versus parkland. And I completely agree with you that while parks are great for people, they're also great for the wildlife that live there. This area provides a contiguous corridor for bear, cougar. It is home to sharp-tailed snakes, a species at risk, and great horned owls and lots of other birds and wildlife. I want to talk about density, and we've heard a lot tonight about determinants of health, social determinants of health. It's an active community where people are safe to walk. The developer says they incorporated feedback from the neighborhood. We gave a lot of feedback, they incorporated some. Our biggest concern was safety because it will increase traffic significantly, and the road is not a very safe road to begin with. And we're worried that active transportation will suffer and our lifestyle will suffer. So site-sensitive development is important, so is community-sensitive development. And I think if Colwood wants to be a leader in climate and healthy communities, then I hope you will listen to the people who live here. Thank you.
Hello again. David Kang, 530 Elevation Point Terrace. There's just a couple things I wanted to add to what my colleagues have said. The current covenants that are in place say that the developer has to develop 8,500 square meters, not square feet, square meters of park space. Now, the current proposal that they are going to present today, if you look through the pages, they're now presenting 2,400 square meters of park space in protected green space that they've also proposed. That'd be a covenant 219 area. It'd be a protected green space. I am encouraged that the city is listening and the councilors are listening to what this community is saying. Moving forward, I would hope that you would continue to be the checks and balances and the litmus test for any development sort of proposals that come into place. For example, I, as a resident, a tax-paying resident, only have 2 minutes to speak to you with regard to our concerns. I can write in, but I don't know if everything I'm communicating there is getting to the city staff or the city council at the end of the day. This 2 minutes is measly compared to the months, weeks, and years that the developer has in creating proposals and presenting in front of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Mandy, 498 Bezanton Way, and I echo every word that my neighbors have said thus far. 5 years ago, we purchased our home. We were led to believe that there would be a new development above us with 27 homes, of which 2 currently have already been built. The proposed display presentation that the developer is about to show you is full of information that is confusing and possibly misleading. There are multiple overlays of maps, some showing up to 29 lots when there should be 27. Under the current covenant, which I believe goes back to 2007, is when that was first signed. What else can I tell you? Bezanton Way, the curve, that area still has not been addressed by council, and this is my 5th time up to the mic. You have my letter on that. The sensitive area that David has already brought up, that was one of my points, so thank you, David. And the suggested proposed development provides affordable housing, is not in alignment with the current market trends, where the nearby townhomes exceed over $1 million. Here on Bezanton Way, our home market values are anywhere between 1.5 and $1.9 million. So if you do approve these 44 townhomes that the developer is now asking to change, that is going to take away from what we were promised originally when we purchased our homes 5 to 7 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? No. Okay, if we could have staff present.
Thank you and good evening, council. So we're here to discuss the rezoning application for 517 Latoria. So just a brief application history. The application was first received by staff in September 2022. A complete application was forwarded to staff in October 2023 and then underwent a review and referral period between October and December 2023. We provided the applicant feedback, and they've addressed their feedback and resubmitted their submission in April 2024. Applicant-led neighborhood consultation was conducted in January of 2024. And when the application was ready to proceed to Planning and Land Use Committee, it was scheduled for the May 6th meeting. And then the application was also considered by the Parks, Trails and Recreation Committee in August 2024. You'll see that the recommendations from the Planning and Land Use Committee and the Parks Committee have been included in your agendas for your consideration. And I will note that this staff recommendation was based off of the committee recommendations and has tried to incorporate those recommendations into one consolidated recommendation for your consideration tonight. Just a little bit of site context. So the property is located at 517 Latoria at the end of Bezanton Road in South Colwood. It is currently zoned as the CD8 zone, which permits single-family homes and a density of up to 59 dwelling units. It is designated by the official community plan as neighborhood and hillside and shoreline. And I'll go through the policies from that designation in the next few slides here. So just with respect to the built form policies, the neighborhood hillside and shoreline designation supports ground-oriented buildings up to 3 stories, including attached housing and duplexes. It also supports a floor area ratio of up to approximately 1.2. The proposal before you tonight is for 3-story townhomes with a floor area ratio of 0.5 approximately. With respect to the public realm policies, the neighborhood hillside and shoreline designation supports proposals that will improve the public realm for pedestrians, create a high degree of permeability, and protect and optimize views from the public spaces. With respect to improving the public realm, the applicant had installed frontage improvements along Latoria Road, which resulted in new sidewalk and street lighting and landscaping on the south side of Latoria Road. So that objective has been satisfied by the phase 1 of the development. Creating a high degree of permeability has to do with creating walking connections. So the proposal includes trail connections that will provide walking connections for those living within the development to the future Olympic view, as well as supporting the future beach to mountain trail network. And for protecting and optimizing views from public spaces, the grade changes between the proposed development and Latoria Road are significant enough that you won't see, or the development won't have a huge impact on the views from Latoria Road. So that objective has been satisfied. And then with respect to the natural assets policies in the OCP, the neighborhood hillside designation requires buildings to be designed in accordance with the site adaptive planning policies. Site adaptive planning is a general approach that involves identifying buildable and non-buildable areas and designing a site plan to locate the buildings in the areas of least constraint in a way that maintains the natural systems and minimizes disruption to the natural landscape. Development should be clustered in a manner that protects natural features, and when it's proposed on a greenfield site such as this, 40% of the site should be retained as part public, part private open space. As part of the rezoning application, the applicant retained a qualified environmental professional to conduct environmental analysis and identify the natural features of the site, map out a site analysis, and develop in the areas of least constraint. They are proposing to protect 50% of the parcel as part private, part public open space. So, and staff are recommending that this be protected through a restrictive covenant registered on the lands. And just a quick overview of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The city's Parks and Recreation Master Plan identifies Latoria neighborhood as a prime candidate for a future park site with play amenities. The plan suggests that the playground either be provided at Pondside Park or on a private land in the area shown in the location identified as number 6 on this slide here. So that's within the vicinity of the subject property. Options to secure a playground in this neighborhood were explored by the city's Parks Department and were presented to the Parks Committee on August 7th. The Parks Committee recommended that a nature-based playground or gathering space be provided as approved by council within the property. And this requirement has been captured in the staff recommendation tonight. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan also contemplates a beach to mountain trail connection through the subject property starting at Pondside Park and making its way to Madrona Bank Park before continuing down to Latoria Road. The applicant has indicated that the trail connection might not be feasible, specifically at the northwest corner of the lot, behind the proposed single-family lot due to challenging grades and impacts to the riparian area there, as well as the fact that it terminates at a private gated community. To achieve the objectives of the Parks and Rec Master Plan, an alternative trail connection through Pondside Park and the public sidewalks along Bezanton Way was explored and presented to the Parks Committee in August as well. this connection was ultimately removed by the committee, and so the staff recommendation tonight has been updated to reflect this. And lastly, the Parks and Rec Master Plan shows a neighborhood connector route going through the subject property along the North Latoria Creek and connecting to Propeller Park. Due to various factors that were outlined in the May 6 Planning and Land Use staff report, the applicant is requesting that council not require this connection. However, they are proposing an alternative neighborhood trail connecting to the future Olympic View, which was presented to the Parks Committee as well on August 7th, and that has been updated in the staff recommendation, including a SRW to ensure that there's going to be public access for that trail. If council endorses the staff recommendation, notices will be published or distributed to the neighboring residents through a postcard in the mail, as well as advertisements in the newspaper prior to the bylaw receiving any readings. And the staff recommendation is included in your agenda package. It's to rezone the property subject to several conditions, one of them being that the applicant provide a site-specific park plan for consideration by council and approval, as well as several conditions which would be registered in a development agreement. Other options before you tonight are to defer the application for additional information, deny the application, or another option is selected by council. And the applicant is also here to present, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any right now.
Thank you. I just had a question about the sewer fees. I was just looking for it again. Now, of course, it eludes me, but 6,000 some, dollars are suggested for sewering the area that was not previously considered in our sewer plans. Can you please speak to how you arrived at that number?
Thank you, through the chair. That number was the amount that was previously included in the original development agreement. I can't speak to how that number was determined, but I believe it's for money that would go towards treating the sewer facilities, treating the sewer, not for building the infrastructure. The money that goes towards building the infrastructure, which is currently captured by our sewer DCC bylaw. So the applicant would be responsible for paying the amount that's in our bylaw.
I'm sorry, that's confused me. You're saying that the amount that's in the report is not what they're going to pay?
Sorry, apologies for the confusion.
Thank you, through the chair. That 6,000 was a number that we haven't got a handle on with regards to how it was determined. That number was developed back in 2017 when this agreement came into place. At that time, it's likely that staff wasn't sure what the ultimate outcome was for treating the effluent of the city of Colwood, because we were in discussions then with the CRD with regards to treatment concepts. So that number was likely some kind of determination of a treatment plan is going to cost X. We have this many residents, we have this much future population. So per unit, because that's how it's listed, it's $6,000. What's happened now is because we now have a solution for treatment, which is the CRD, we have ongoing costs, not of a treatment plant with employees, maintenance costs, but of a contract with the CRD. So it's our intent from a staff perspective that that money would be used as part of our reserve fund for the CRD with regards to that treatment, because ultimately at some point we're going to need to buy more capacity. And those funds would be put into a reserve fund that would pay for that capacity. The other side of it is the collection side, which is what the DCC is for, which is the pipes that take that effluent, put it to the road, eventually get it to the treatment plant. So that's a different cost and that's a different number. So there'd be both numbers with regards to expense. Does that help?
Thank you. So I would just point out for council that that is a number that we don't really understand whether or not that is sufficient to cover the costs. And I would argue that possibly it is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, please, for staff. I've heard now twice, information about an unfulfilled covenant attached to this property. Can you be absolutely clear on what that's referring to? Is there something that's unfulfilled along the way, or are we perhaps talking about the previous development agreement?
Thank you, Councillor Jensen, and through the chair, we'd be talking about the previous development agreement. The requirement, I think, that wasn't fulfilled previously was the parks, the parks plan and making sure that the playground is provided. But going forward,
sure,
staff would be ensuring that all of the development agreement conditions are going to be satisfied at the timing according to that's laid out in the staff recommendation. So prior to any bylaw readings, a site-specific parks plan would need to be approved by council prior to development permit being issued. We'd be checking the development agreement to make sure that they're meeting their conditions in the agreement.
Okay, thank you. And I see that here in our agenda for reference, and I've been through it. Thank you. But to me, a covenant is entirely different. So there is no encumbrances on this property in the way of a covenant that is yet to be filled. Is that accurate?
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Through the chair, the development agreement was registered as a Section 219 covenant.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Desiree. Anybody have any other questions? No. If we could have that applicant come up, that'd be great.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, members of council, members of the public. My name is Mike Wignell. I'm with Westbrook Consulting. I'm here tonight on behalf of 42093 BC Limited, which is John Newton, Chuck Mahar, who's watching online, and another partner. I'm here to present to the zoning amendment on 517 Latoria Road. The current proposal represents a long-awaited final chapter in a project that the owners purchased in 1998. I'm sure they never anticipated a 25-year build-out, but with market conditions, COVID, evolving planning requirements, and other issues, here we are. The intention is to develop the area left cleared and left as a rock stockpile for 7 years now to finish the project. In essence, the rezoning is an amendment to allow attached housing either in clusters of 3 or more or in duplex units on the undeveloped portion of the site only. There is one single family lot proposed adjacent to 3642 Ridgeview Terrace. The rules for this lot will be exactly the same as every other lot in the earlier phases of the project, a single family dwelling with allowance for a suite. The site is located, as Desiree said, immediately south of Elevation Point Terrace. It's shown in yellow on this slide. You can also see Latoria Road to the north, Veterans Memorial Parkway to the northwest, and the Royal Bay development to the east. This is a zoomed in slide of the location plan. Originally, the entire site fronted on Latoria Road, hence the address of 517 Latoria. As the earlier phases were developed, the remaining undeveloped piece is still referred to as 517 Latoria, although it no longer directly borders Latoria Road. The ownership group has owned the property since 1998. Phase 1 was built about 7 years ago. You can see it on the plan before you, and was sold in several subphases. Phase 2, we've been working on it since 2017. We've been coordinating with the City of Colwood staff, the project arborist, landscape architect, and QEP for the last 17 years. We've also enlisted the help of a traffic consultant and a sharp-tailed snake specialist. In 2021, After trying various single-family layout options, Colwood staff of the day suggested we look at a townhouse option as it was thought to be more in keeping with the principles of site adaptive planning. We have followed the principles of site adaptive planning. We have prepared a natural assets inventory. We've looked at protecting habitat areas. We've incorporated existing natural features. We are proposing to maintain tree buffers and minimize ecosystem disturbance. We're maintaining water flow pathways. We have hosted 2 community meetings earlier this year at Wishart Elementary. Among the concerns raised by the neighbors were privacy, the density we're proposing, the impact of traffic and the amount of visitor parking, the impacts to the trees and the adjacent Madrona Creek, snow removal strategies and locations, park dedication, playground location, and construction traffic and dust control. You can see the various factors that impact the development. Our project biologists identified firstly the 30-meter riparian assessment area, or RAA, adjacent to Madrona Creek, shown right there. The RAA is a zone in which the investigation and determination of the streamside protection and enhancement area zone width takes place. That's a big term. We call it SPIA for short. There's the 10-meter SPIA. This is what our project biologists came up with. The 10-meter zone is a no disturbance zone. You're not to go in there. It's the natural environment. You leave it alone. You don't put trails in it. You don't put roads in it. You leave it alone. Our project arborist mapped out the edge of existing vegetation suitable for retention. And that line is shown in the plan as well. All of these leave the blue area in the center, which is the most disturbed area, as the site for potential development. So there's our development. It consists of 1 fee simple lot. Right there. 44 townhouses. A change from before is that we have always had double car garages, but we've made an adjustment to get full length driveways on every unit. So to do this, we have slid about 2 meters beyond the yellow line at the east side of the property. So for that little bit of disturbance, we now have double car garages and 2-car parking on every driveway for everybody. We also have 12 visitor stalls. This leaves the area in green as open space, which is 15,500 square meters. And the plan is to protect it by a split rail fence shown in orange around the protected open space. There has been a lot of reference made to the original lot layout, the original covenant, the original expectation, the original agreement. So this is the original plan. We have 2 municipal dead-end roads and 27 fee simple lots remaining for the overall allowance that we had to start with. We had a tot lot shown in green there, and we had additional park dedication throughout the site. The total proposed park dedication at that time was 8,500 square meters. But I think we might have missed on, because everybody feels we're getting away with something by moving away from this, and I think we're actually giving you more. So here's the old layout superimposed on the new layout. The original park dedication is in pink. You can see that we're retaining all of the original park dedication, except for this one small piece that was really there to provide a walkway between the 2 dead-end roads. The additional open space that we're proposing now is shown in green. So your total combined area is 15,500 square meters of open space. So parks master plan and covenant requirements, we're looking for a playground and trail connections. We've said before that with phase one, we completed the connectivity along Bezanton to connect Latoria up into the site and beyond to the west. What we're proposing here is within our open space, and you notice there's Propeller Park in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. We're proposing to take 2,400 square meters of our open space and dedicate it as park. It would line up right with Propeller Park. And if you've been to Propeller Park, there's quite a cliff from Propeller Place. So I don't think there's a lot of people that visit Propeller Park, certainly from Propeller Place, unless they're good at rock climbing. Within that park area, and this is the reason really for dedicating this park, we've got a playground location established. We've met with your park superintendent on site. This is a bit of a zoom in of it. So to get to that park, we would create a public right-of-way over the private roadway up into the site, and then a public trail connection shown in magenta there to get to the municipal park. The proposed playground location would be within the proposed park dedication footprint area of approximately 200 square meters. And we're looking at coming up with the design with swings, slides, other climbing structures. We have to work the details out, as you know, in your staff report with the Parks Department, but that's where we're looking at going, and we reviewed the location with the park superintendent. We're also proposing to construct a trail through to the border with the Olympic View lands so it can add to connectivity in the future, so that you will be able to walk through the townhouse site, down the walkway to the park, and southward to Olympic View in the future. So yes, there's park dedication of 2,400, and the comments been made tonight that we're only dedicating 2,400 instead of 8,500. But the bottom line is we're also dedicating or providing 13,100 square meters of open space for our total of 15,500, which I think is the more fair comparison. Also, there's a future viewpoint. We know you were very interested in a viewpoint, and it was discussed to be at the northern end of our site, but I think that the people in the houses in the neighborhood immediately north of us wouldn't feel so keen on having a public viewpoint park in their backyards. I have visions of what could take place there on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and I don't think that's a neighborhood friendly thing. So this one is a little more obscure. It can be police potentially from the strata if there's people walking in there and doing silly things. But it also provides a very good viewpoint as well, looking in a slightly different direction, and it is contiguous to Propeller Park. So we think it's as good a plan or better than the one that I've heard suggested. Finally, amenity contributions. Speaking of parks specifically, the parks DCCs will be $2,455.67 per unit for over $110,000 given. And community amenity contributions will be now $7,500 per unit for a total of over $330,000. Finally, it was mentioned briefly by Councillor Day about the sewer fee for the reserve fund of $6,270. We were a little surprised, and perhaps we shouldn't have been, but when this fee came up, and I guess we should have known about it before, but we didn't. But there's also the sewer enhancement DCC fee of $2,488. If we have to pay both these fees, we have to pay both these fees. And if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But it came as a little bit, for better or for worse, a little bit unexpectedly, and we would like to just investigate a little further and make sure that both these fees are payable. And if they are, that's great, but that would be the only other concern we would have. And I think that concludes the guts of my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wignall. A few things. I like some of the changes that have been made. I like the green space, the commitment to the green space. And then for me, there's still a question mark about the park, and you've touched on it a little bit, but it doesn't warm me up to the idea to think that I need crampons and ropes to enjoy this park area that's being committed to the city. And as yourself mentioned, you know, it's an area to rock climb. The original development agreement in paragraph 5, 6 at the bottom of it, it specifies a park. And a park is not green space. And I appreciate what it is that you've done there and tried to squeeze it in down there amongst all those lines. I think back to my old army days, and I know from marching around in the woods with a map and a compass that lines like that are that close together, that's bad. It's steep. And quite frankly, we have other developments where we've inherited some hillsides and, you know, slap some lipstick on it and call it a green space, I guess. But we have an opportunity here. You have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to deliver a park for the neighborhood. These people in the area have been awaiting a park and amenity in that area. That area in Latoria Valley is lacking in children's play places. And quite frankly, I was excited about acquiring a play area, and I can appreciate what you're trying to achieve there. But for me, accessibility, I'm just thinking of a family with 3 kids and 1 parent. And guess what? With all those diaper bags, you drive to the park. Is there a place to park? I don't see that. We have that in most of our park areas. You know, other amenities as far, I mean, I can appreciate your pictures of the play structures, and I think that's great. But it's the location and the size. And I mean, the last time you were here, I believe the park was down near the front of the development, and I thought that's probably a much better location for this, so people can access it. As far as transiting through the property, presumably this is all stratified, I'm sure. So to get to the trail connection in the pink there, are we asking residents just to meander through this strata along the roadway to get there? Yeah. Push your button, Mike, sorry.
Got it. Yeah, as I said earlier, we were concerned about the liability of having people, the public in a private park, and we've resisted all the way along. But, you know, the impact of having public people walking down a private road isn't really that big of a deal. It was more about somebody hurting themselves in a private park. And that was the sole reason really that we made this park. The previous location for the park was about where the OSE is and proposed in that plan there. And having walked it with your park superintendent, I think this is a better location for a park. It's less disruptive. The issue with the steepness of the park that we're proposing is, my understanding was that people were interested in a viewpoint, and my clients just aren't keen on the viewpoint at the north end of the property, as I think the residents will not be keen on having people behind them. So if you look at the plan, yeah, Propeller Park existing is quite steep, and our part isn't actually that steep up on top. There's a little bit that could do with, maybe there's one set of steps you might need that, you know, we've been talking to Colwood about how that would happen. But the idea is it would be a nature park and people could wander their way up. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't meant to be a level park. It was meant to be a viewpoint.
Okay. So 220 square meters is, I would call that a micro park. And in fact, our definition of a park specifies 0.2 a hectare. which is like, I think, what is it, the 8,000 square meters, somewhere's along there, in my math.
0.2 of a hectare is 2,000 square meters. And the park area that we're dedicating is 2,400. Within that 2,400 square meters of park, we're building a 2,200 square meter playground. We could make it bigger if you want, but we kind of want to nestle it in.
I got you. So forgive my math. I have an arts degree, but I think you can appreciate what I'm saying here is the community is looking for a park. And it looks to me here, admittedly, I've been through that area and I've walked it, you know, from the roadway and on, so I haven't been to that back corner. I'm inclined to go have a look at it, but I do have faith in our park staff. But the reality is we're getting from 8,500 square meters down to a small play area. Yes, I can appreciate the green space dedication. This community has told us loud and clear that they want to keep as many trees as possible. So I think for me, one of the pluses is the fact that you're committing that kind of green space. But I do want to see some more work done in the park. And the question then becomes for me is what do I do with this? We lose control of the zoning once this starts going to readings. And, you know, once it's past its third reading, or is it fourth reading? I think it's third reading.
Fourth reading.
Then we've lost all control to, you know, maintain any control over what the changes look like. To be fair, and I want to be very clear about this to the community, so that I'm above board, that I appreciate the current configuration with the townhomes and the preservation of more green space. Is there more work to be done? I believe there is, and it's in the area of the park and the trails. Is there a connection through to the Olympic View lands on the other side that's anticipated? I don't see anything going the other direction.
We had originally suggested the Olympic View Trail connection, and your Parks Department came back and said, well, that's still in a state of flux. But as you know, there's been extensive discussions, and this is where we came back to. If I could make two other quick comments. The tot lots at the front of the property, my take on the previous meetings is that public hated them. And they thought they were ridiculously small and useless. So we thought, well, let's do something a little more substantial. Also, you raise a concern about people driving to the park, but I think the neighborhood would want it to be a local park that they could walk to. And I don't think they want to have a large number of people driving into it. We're trying to balance, like we're walking a tightrope. It's a tough spot.
Get it. We're walking a tightrope as well.
We all are.
And so I'm answerable to the community. You're answerable to your ownership group, shareholders, what have you. So, you know, our interests perhaps are not completely aligned as of yet, although I think that you've made some moves in the right direction. And yes, we had concerns. I had concerns about the vision for the park at the other end of the property, but you could have come back with something that expanded on what that looked like up there and changed, you know. I'm sorry, maybe it means that unit number 34 is lost to a park area. I don't think that's a big price to pay. And we've lost our screen.
Yeah, could you bring me back?
Madam Corporate Services. Wrestling.
My apologies. We're just having some issues with live streaming, so I was just trying to see if that would help.
Thank you. So I think I'm going to yield at this point in time. I may circle back a little bit. I believe that you have made some moves in the right direction. I'm still not entirely convinced about the park dedication. And, you know, a park in the community's eyes, in my eyes, and we had this discussion earlier tonight about the difference between a park and a green space. That development agreement says park. It doesn't say green space where I need a ladder, you know, to access it. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll yield at this time. Thank you.
I just wanted to step in here and just ask some questions or actually just explain. So on either side of this development area, you've got Madrona townhouse subdivision off Bezanton Way. It's probably the largest area and it has about 40 units in it. And then on the other side, you've got, and these are really nice developments. You've got the Propeller Place Townhome subdivision, probably medium size, and it's 31 units. And then you've got the smallest size, and 44 units are going into it. To me, that, and it doesn't have the appeal that the other ones have. And then I'm confused because along the way we've received information where we show that basically the top of the area is I guess it would be, yeah, is riparian, and then at the bottom is retained existing for invasive species management. And then we come to this meeting, and now we've got a suggested park on top of where these, you know, in the southeast corner where this shark-tailed snake is supposed to live. So I'm confused what we're trying to do here. And what I don't see is, what I see is that the strata is, I think, what is causing some of these issues, because you don't want your green space within the strata because of the legal ramifications, the liability issues of the strata. So why are we looking at a strata? Like duplex lots, are they fee simple? Are they stratified?
The plan on the screen now was the original development, and all of those units were suitable. So effectively, those are 2 units. And, you know, people are very concerned about the covenant being renegotiated, et cetera. And that covenant was prepared to match this plan. I guess it's always possible that we could do this plan, but it just seems like an incredible waste of all the site adaptive planning that we put into this to save the environment and get us here where we are. The numbers about the number of units for the property area, I think it's a fairer comparison to look at the overall parent property size. Because what you're doing with your math, I think, is you're looking at the area of the townhouses themselves, whereas not recognizing the amount that we're giving up for green space around it. Had we made a more conventional distributed development, the townhouses wouldn't seem so dense. There wouldn't be as much environment preserved, and the numbers wouldn't seem so bad, but they'd be the same.
But the reality is that is the reality. You know, what I see a good compromise would be to take out some units and put the park in the middle, put it in the middle of the development, and that's a park. You just tried to put it around the outside of where there's sensitive areas. It doesn't seem to me that protecting the open spaces is the greatest concern. It's more about how many units are on it. Anyway, that's just my take. I'll just let Cynthia speak.
You stole my thunder, Councillor Jordison, because that was exactly my point, was that for a tot lot to really be successful, it needs to be in the middle. And in speaking to your residents, they would like a park that's usable, central, has some view, because that's one of the wonderful things about this area, is that you're up high and you have a view. And I do appreciate that you're looking at the retention of some of the areas that haven't been destroyed. But this lot has gone through a lot. I have been here for all of it. I see it. And I wouldn't say preservation was top of mind when it started. What I'm looking to get out of this for the residents is that there's a plan put in place that respects both the needs of the people who will live there and the people who have already invested in the neighborhood. I recognize that it's difficult given the topography and the way it's been developed. But I think what's needed is to get the residents on side. And the way to do that is to put the park in a central location so that the kids can ride their bikes around the road and go to the park and stop and play and come home and enjoy the neighborhood. That's what I think the best answer is. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you. I mean, I feel for you, Mr. Wignall, you're between a rock and a hard place here. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't speak for anyone else, but I'm of the belief that there's a little politicking going on here. There's residents in the room that don't want to see this happen. They object to the density primarily. So we've now started to talk about parks for months on end as a way to dance around making a decision on this thing. I think the challenge here goes back to the original plan, would have required significant blasting, and as we can see, would have removed the vast portion of the green space that is there to continue the single family design that was started in the first phase. And obviously in late 2021, 2022, the wind shifted a little bit on that. And, you know, to the developer's credit, they didn't suddenly decide, hey, let's cram in a whole bunch more density. You know, I know it's odd for me to always defend a developer, but that's the reality. The city approached them and said, hey, let's use site adaptive planning here, preserve more green space, which is better for the environment. And then I hear environmental concerns being raised, and I think, okay, what are we really getting at? And I think we should cut to the chase and talk about the truth of the matter, which is density. The people that live in phase one, I will, you know, paraphrase maybe, they have a concern about the nature of the project. And there's standard issues raised about lowering property values, traffic, things like that. You know, all of these have reasonable points to be discussed around it. That scientifically, there's no evidence to support that it lowers property values. So I'll disagree with that one. That's not based in reality. Traffic, we can argue that either way. You know, you're looking at, with suites in there, a single family home development that was originally designed would have had 54 units. So you'd have traffic from 54 units coming in and out of that development. With it being townhomes, we have 44 units. So it's kind of a wash, but at the same time, I understand the concerns of the folks that live there. They bought with an expectation that it would be something different. And that means something, but I just don't want to dance around that. I think the reality is that's what I'm looking at, is that the residents don't want the project as it's laid out. And, you know, we're beholden to the residents ultimately. And Mike, I'm just being really blunt here for you, because I think you can see the way the winds are going on this thing, is that the current plan may address what the city has brought forward in terms of site adaptive planning and, you know, parks, but I can just see this spinning in circles, because at the end of the day, the folks that live there are not going to like the project as it's laid out. So rather than talk about parks in the middle and dance around the true core issue here, let's talk about density and say, okay, is there something different we can do on this lot, you know, that makes it more aligned with the character of the neighborhood, which, as Councillor Jordison put forward, you know, you've got 31 units in Propeller Place, fairly upscale townhomes, Madrona Park, pretty similar. I suspect there's a happy middle ground where the folks that live in phase one would say, okay, I can accept that. You know, and I just want to throw that out on the table, because I think otherwise we're going to keep sending it off to different committees and we're going to pretend that a small little park in the corner is the real issue, when, let's be honest, it's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. And yeah, I would have to agree with you, but I guess my question, and maybe it's a staff question, is what would happen if these units were duplexes and not townhouses? Are they still stratified? Are they, does it still have to be a strata if they're duplex lots? They do. Because I think that is part of the difficulty here too, putting up, you know, a playground or a park space within the stratified lots is, it causes a legal issue. So I don't have the answers. I just, yeah. So I'm not really sure where to go from here, but so yeah. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not really sure, where else to go with this. What I have before me, I can't vote in favor of. I don't want to slam the door in your face, in that if, you want to work with the community and make a different plan, if that is a better idea, or if you just want the blunt answer that the answer is no, that this proposal doesn't meet what the community expects. I'm happy to go either way. But my recommendation at the moment is leaning towards decline. But I think that I don't want to throw away. There is something to be salvaged here, and I don't want to throw it all out the window. So if any, maybe Councillor Jansen has a good idea.
Councillor Jansen.
No way to throw me under the bus. Thanks. You know, I mean, I've heard everybody, and I think I've said enough, quite frankly, but I do believe there's merit here for what's before us. And I do believe that there's been some significant moves in the right direction. But I do also feel like so there's more work to be done. What I'm not inclined to do is move this forward with the hopes that, you know, between you and staff and back and forth with staff, that somewhere down the road we come up with something. I prefer that it come forward first. We see it, we all get behind it, and then we move it along to subsequent readings. That would be my hope. And my pad went dead, so I don't know if somebody else has a motion to make out of the list there, but I had it in front of me and now it's died. So I'll yield as a result. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. In the absence of seeing further discussion around the table or an option that I could present to, hopefully you won't take this as a slamming of the door, but I need something different. I need something the community can get behind. And so I will move that the rezoning RZ, a lot of zeros, 11 for 517 Latoria Road be denied.
Second it.
Thank you,
Councillor Howard.
Councillor Jordison. I'm just going to go on record as stating that I will support the motion to close the door for the moment. But I do so, you know, with a note to the developers again, that I think it's about understanding the true issue here. And for all the talk about parks, with all due respect to my council mates, I don't buy it. I think it's about density. And I think that's the message that this table has heard from the neighbors and the community. They don't want to address it directly, perhaps. Again, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I will. And, you know, in isolation, I think the project could work in a lot of places. This particular place, there's a lot stacked against it, but I think in terms of guidance to you, that's the honest truth, is that that density isn't going to work. We heard from some folks here tonight. We've heard from a lot of them at past meetings. And at the end of the day, that's the constituency that we are beholden to. Those are the people that we're elected to represent. And that's why I'm voting no. It has nothing to do with park space or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess we can, yeah, sorry. Call the question. All those in favor of Cynthia's motion? To deny, yeah, sorry. Let's just see, yeah. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, for all those opposed. Councillor Grove, thank you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, 2-minute recess, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. We're gonna proceed here because we're gonna be very tight on time. The next item is was a 7.1, which was moved from the consent agenda. And it's now 8.4, updates to development application consultation policy. And Councillor Jordison just has a quick question on it, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Jordison.
So I just want to thank Councillor Jansen for bringing that motion forward in the first place, but I'm just worried that we might have forgotten something, and it was about sometimes when you have a development, there's like a park or a space beside you that doesn't have a resident particularly in it. So in my case, a 40-acre natural park, Havenwood Park, and so nobody gets notified in that area. So I was just wondering if maybe the wording should be like that the 75-meter notification, that we increase it to 100 meters or within 3 lots in all directions, whichever is greater from the boundary of the site, so that you're always ensuring that somebody's notified. That was my only concern.
Please, Councillor Ward.
I break a rule.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Both Councillor Jansen and I addressed this during the Land Use and Planning Committee meeting around this. In fact, Councillor Jansen raised that issue, and the consensus from the group there was that if you read the wording here, it's 75 meters to a minimum of 100 meters, and staff's belief at the time or insistence at the time was that they could use judgment based on that wording, that it's a minimum of 100 meters. So in a specific scenario where you've got, as you said, a 40-meter gap, staff can exercise judgment to bring that to 140 meters, 150 meters. We kicked it around at length about various different ways to incorporate distances and things, and it became overly complex. So I think this was an easy way to address the exact question that you're asking.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, is that good? Thank you. Councillor Jensen. I don't want to turn this into a 20-minute debate here. Please, Councillor.
Yeah, I have a 8-point follow-up. No, just kidding. Just to append to what Councillor Ward had to say, which was accurate, staff are going to consider some of what was brought forward for notifications with the upcoming redo of the zoning and planning bylaw. So there's more to come is the point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no motion. Okay, no, it's fine. Are you okay, Councillor Jordison, with that? Perfect. Okay, thank you. We're gonna go straight into section 9, the bylaws.
Your worship,
Yes, sir.
was council intending to make the motion that committee recommended?
Oh, yes, of course. We have to do that because it was taken on the consent agenda. Okay, Councillor Jensen moves it. Seconder, Councillor Ward. Discussion, seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Okay, section 9, bylaws. Marcy, can I get you just to read the bylaws, please? 9.1 and 9.2.
My apologies. We have bylaw number 2021-01, the 5-year financial plan amendment, and there is a report from the Director of Finance.
Get a motion, please. Mover and seconder, please. Thank you. Councillor Olson and Councillor Jordison. Discussion. Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. 9.2.
We have bylaw number 2038, the election signs bylaw for adoption.
Okay. Mover, seconder. Councillor Jordison, Councillor Day. And discussion. Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Now we'll take a break just to go into in camera, please. So we have a mover and seconder for to close the meeting to the public. Okay, Councillor Day and Councillor Grove. Any discussion? Any opposed? Unanimous. We're going to go into. Thank you very much.